All right, so we're just going to have the panel facilitated by Professor Tom Calma. We have Felicity online to pop in, and we have Reakeeta, Yeena, and Elissa sitting over. I don't know how to change the camera, so we'll, I'll get you guys just to move a separate. Perfect.
How's that?
Excellent. Thank you very much. And if anyone has any online questions, just pop them through and we can read those out throughout. Thank you. Take it away, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Kisani, and I trust you can hear me okay. Yep, oh, good. And look, we've just, been able to observe, if you've been here for this morning's session, great presentations, which covered off a whole range of areas around the art and craft sector. And I guess what we learned throughout this process is that we don't want to define art too narrowly in just being paintings or sculptures, but art for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people can take many different forms. And not only does it take different forms, but it also has different purposes, and it's more than just an activity for an individual, but it's an opportunity to really be in a position to be able to share experiences and thoughts. We were able to a heavy emphasis on health implications of art, and how through an art activity we can address a whole lot of health issues. We also learnt about how research can influence, and it's critically important to be able to influence not only the interpretation of the art, but how do we utilise art and craft to advance other health and socio-economic issues. We learnt, and we heard throughout the use of Aboriginal languages and references. So we're taking back control and using it as a vehicle to educate others that not only do we privilege Aboriginal art and language and culture, but it's important for those who work in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander sector to have a very reasonable understanding and a culturally competent understanding about who we are and the issues that confront us. We heard about systemic discrimination and racism that pervades the health sector, and how we need to address that. So overall, it was a great session, and I guess the other important reference was the international relationship that we have through the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and the references in there to language, culture, arts, and ownership by our people. So we've got a great deal, I think, to talk about, and I shouldn't skip over saying how relevant those videos were and how informative they were, and you can get so much out of a recording like those videos, because you can go back and reflect on them and pick up on all those little nuanced issues that you might have missed in the first showing of it. So let's make sure that we have the links to those videos up on our final report for others to be able to reflect on. So Kisani, I thought I'd just start off by asking the panel if there were anything that they wanted to reflect on that they may not have covered in their presentation, but in hearing the other presentations, was there anything they wanted to add to the discussion? If there's not, it's not a compulsory question. We'll go on to you reading out the other questions that have been asked. But panelists, anything you wanted to have a say on?
They're thinking.
Thinking. Yeah.
I think
Okay,
there's
well,
been a
whilst
lot of
they're thinking
crossover.
about that,
I
Sorry?
suppose, oh, sorry, Uncle. I suppose the only thing I would say is working in Aboriginal health research is it's not so much about your intent or the aim or whatever you do. It's actually about being open to follow the synergies that come, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Waiting for that time and having that patience and that consideration of all of the different relationships that come around. And when the time is right, the synergies align and things move quicker than they would normally do in academia. So I suppose anyone that's sort of thinking about engaging in Aboriginal research or what that looks like in the health space, I think really taking that time to sit and reflect and wait and be patient and go humbly, go slowly, and yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's got to do with listening and hearing what people have, you know, from our community perspective, what people have to say. But also, you know, there was a reference to the dairy and, you know, the deep listening that needs to happen. And I think that's, you know, an important one. But just for, you know, people's sort of reference, in the accord, that the Higher Education Accord, there is a reference in the recommendations to privileging a lot more, you know, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in research that's done about us, and that we've got to be part of that research, and it's also through the MRFF funding, and it'll flow on to NH&MRC funding as well. That any research done for and on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people by non-Indigenous people, they have to meaningfully engage, you know, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as research associates, and not just as passive, you know, mentions in their research. So we are moving towards getting greater reference, and that's something that we'll be assessing in these projects.
Are there any questions from the
Kisani,
audience?
any questions?
There's nothing on the chat at the moment, but was there any questions from anyone present at the moment? You look like you have something to say. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Probably a comment first and then a question. So I'm a non-Indigenous health service manager, and I've had the privilege of working with AMS programs, and I've seen belly casting and seen the impacts on KPIs in Armidale. So I just want to thank you for that presentation and echo that, yeah, that's incredible work. And just tapping into the importance of Aboriginal health workers and Aboriginal health practitioners in leading so much of what we do with our services. It's a big responsibility. How do we support and acknowledge the responsibility that comes with leading so much of what we do as managers, I suppose? How do you have any tips of supporting Aboriginal health workers and practitioners?
Aboriginal health worker practitioner led models of care are the way to go. Also, we talk about reciprocity, and when we were talking about, when Elissa, you know, talked about clinicians doing that education that is vital to what the health problem is, and then giving that information to the practitioners, to the Aboriginal health workers, so that they're delivering it in a way that is translatable for their mob to understand what's going on. And it's not that we're silly, it's just that sometimes when we're confronted with health problems that can be huge or small, we don't listen. And that's, I think that's a normal thing for a lot of people when they're confronted with a huge health problem, you know. So being able to make sure that the Aboriginal health workers have the right information to give to their community members, you know, who a lot of them are their family members. And I think that actual understanding from clinicians to realise that this process is going to take a little bit more than a 5-minute visit in a clinic room, or even an hour visit at someone's home. I think the reality that that Aboriginal people, health workers, sit around just talking, you know, in the community is so nonsensical, you know, like it's not a real thing. We're sitting there for a long time trying to let everybody know what's going on, or teaching lots more people than just one person about what's happening. So I feel like there really needs to be that respect. Just because I didn't go to university and get a B mid doesn't mean I can't teach a woman how to breastfeed, you know, and I can't tell her the physical and biological aspects of breastfeeding, just like the, what's she called? The breastfeeding expert. Lactation, there you go. You know, I think that there's things that we can teach, you know, that Aboriginal people can learn that will be more meaningful if we deliver the information. And I think that's just something that it's like, you know, asking other people from cold backgrounds, you know, where's their interpreters? That's what we sort of are, you know, but we're also, I think, yeah, that would be a couple of tips there, and you'll be right. I just think that reciprocity, definitely, because we're not just door openers and taxi drivers, right? We're not just getting the people so that the health looks better. And I want to know the real data. I want to know when someone is not looked after in an institution and there's a bad outcome, I want that to be expressed as well. I want them to come and say sorry to my community or to that family. You know, lots of Aboriginal, we know how many blackfellas die in custody. We don't know how many blackfellas die from neglect of health services in this country. So, you know, if we want to go down that rabbit hole, holy moly, take us another 200 years. Anyways, that's my say. Sorry for all those health people.
Good point. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. No, sorry, not sorry.
All right, so we have a question online which is related. How do we acknowledge and value community researchers who don't want to go down the HDR academia journey?
Yep.
Yeah, our team is pretty diverse. Our Aboriginal health practitioners are CIs, not just associate investigators. They're chief investigators on our projects. The research wouldn't be possible without them. So it's important that we acknowledge them, you know, as equals or even, you know, leaders, because they've got all of that additional knowledge that us as non-Indigenous researchers and clinicians just don't have. And yeah, there's lots of ways for people to be involved without, you know, going through the whole PhD route. But yeah, just making those opportunities available. And yeah, just coming at it from a different way, like the way that our team meets and the way that we write up what we do is a little bit outside of the box, but I think everyone and the work that we do benefits from sort of coming at it from that way.
I just want to say that I think with the non-traditional research, you know, ideas that more universities are going into and community researchers being more valued. And I think through the community panel, we've identified a couple of research projects that the community want to do, and they'll be led by community with researchers supporting them. So yeah, I think it's just about fighting for it to happen, or just making it happen, just doing it without, and say sorry later, like I do.
I actually have a point. I can talk on this as well. With I've been on 2 projects now, my own and also an MRFF bushfires impact project with UNE. And both of those projects, like my own, I had co-researchers and they were community researchers. That's what that co-research, strengths-based sort of approach. They are researchers. They are valued, and their knowledge is, important for the project that includes collaborative research methods. On the MRFF Bushfires Impact Project, we actually hired community members as research assistants, employed them through the university. It was, from the very beginning put into the project plan to ensure that their knowledge and contributions were valued and paid, a paid position. And I think that's definitely something that I'm seeing happening in different research projects that I've been, involved in, but also seeing come up, in our yarns and that sort of thing, and networking, that, people are starting to think of employing community members in positions where they have that knowledge, they're already embedded within the community. They've got those networks to be able to, bring people in, because I think that's one of the issues that sometimes we face, is going into a community, not knowing the community, not having that relationship. You need to have that conduit between the two.
No, I agree, Kisani. And I guess the other thing about having a whole of community panel means that you can meet a lot of Aboriginal people from a community at once, and then, as a researcher, and then you can be given that direct feedback about whether, your idea that you're coming there with is going to be crazy, or if it's going to be like, yeah, I want to be on that. And this is what happens with our panel. People will say, oh, we know people that you need to talk to about that. And so the researchers get direct contacts of people, or they say, Yeena will talk to them first, and you'll do it that, doing that sort of, that joining people up and connecting people together. But it definitely works if everyone's just agreeable and is able to give a little bit of time for it not to happen yesterday. Yeah. But I agree.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognise that in all research that, the key thing about engagement is that that people are meaningfully engaged, that they are compensated where that might be due. But equally important is that whilst they might not be CIs, there's nothing wrong with being an AI, or a research assistant. But the key thing is that they're cited in the research as being an active member of it. They're cited in any publications that might go, and we should be seeking out, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander input in our research and in our publications, because not only does it authenticate and that there has been meaningful engagement, but it also encourages the non-Indigenous members to think a little bit outside of what they might be familiar with in their former research. And as I mentioned, it's being helped along because some of the major research funders now are making sure that is a requirement, but it's equally important for the lead researchers to engage. And co-design you know, is so important at the very outset, even before a research project is funded. Don't come after the event. Engage us in the whole process. I think is important. That's why that video was very. I enjoyed watching that.
Absolutely. I'll actually add to that as well. There are some pretty amazing publications out there that have country as lead author, because the information, that knowledge comes from community who are, you know, intrinsically country. So having them, you know, well, it's Barwaka country. There's quite a few publications that are, you know, Barwaka country as lead author, and some of the researchers that were on that are non-Indigenous, but value that information enough to make them lead author, to make it country lead author. Yeah.
Yep.
We have a question from the audience.
Thanks very much, Kisani, and thank you to all the presenters. Those were really impactful and very moving presentations, but very encouraging. I just wanted to ask Yeena, if it's okay, as someone who aspires to put a project in front of your panel, what advice you might have in preparing the EOI, what sort of things the panel really would like to see researchers having really thought about, and connections that have been made. And so any advice you could give, that would be great.
Thanks, Claire, for your question. I think the community panel want to know what is your engagement with Aboriginal people been about the whole research question? How did you come up with it? You know, whose idea was it? Did you go and consult with people about something that you were interested in and thought that they might be? And did they actually change what you thought might be, you know, did they change your research question? Who are the people that you've talked to? You know, has it been one or two people, or has it been a whole group of people? Also, how will you build the capacity of Aboriginal people through your research? So how will you involve Aboriginal people in the research project? And, you know, will there be ways that Aboriginal people can be part of your research team? I think they want to know that stuff. And what are your outcomes? How will you, what impact do you think you will have? And how will you then bring back those findings, and how will they be distributed to our communities?
Thank you for that. That's excellent.
I also have something to add to that. I know that it's a bit of a grey area when you're doing your ethics application. You know, you come up with a plan, you submit your ethics, you get the approval, and then you have to do the alterations afterwards. But when it comes to working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, that plan is malleable, and really you've got to have like a very basic plan, talk to the community, have their input into the plan that's then submitted to your, you know, in your ethics application. So, and, you know, that first step needs to be done first, because you need to get approval from the community to even go in there and, you know, conduct that research. So you've got to kind of do it after having that first initial engagement. Yeah, not beforehand. So
yeah, I think the concept idea is the way to go before you get any funding, before you even think about putting in a grant. Because if you come to our panel at concept stage and we give you a letter to say this woman's, or you know, this team's gonna be really great. They've said they've showed us how they're going to do all this stuff. Then, especially with the University of Newcastle, your grant is more likely to be given if you've done this rigorous process, because the grants office is actually the people who are letting the researchers know now, our grants office at at Newcastle Uni, they, as soon as anything's identified as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health or any research at this stage, we have environment, we have education. So we're haven't just been health projects. So they just let everyone know. And I have this email address, obviously, that I'm going to monitor. But, you know, so I talk to a lot of people, you know, a lot of people who are in their concept stage of their research and just given guidance around what else needs to happen there. Even though I haven't really done it, I will admit I don't have a degree, only in my life, a degree in my life. But, you know, obviously I'm learning as I go as well, but I'm coming more from a community perspective on what you need to do with your research and how it can be much more beneficial and ethical as well, you know, like really be able to hear what Aboriginal people say that their ethics are, and then you can sort of have more of a guidance on how to go along their paths.
Uncle Tom, you probably have quite a bit to say about this as well with your experience in AHMRC.
Yeah, and yeah, look, there's a lot we could say about it, and I think I'm just conscious of time and having to get back, and also that you know, Kisani is going to be representing MIF after lunch, talking about HDRs and research. But I think, you know, for people working within the university sector, it's probably a little bit easy. You've got university ethics committees, but if you're outside the university sector and you've got to go to other external parties like AHMRC in New South Wales, that's a different ethics process that you have to go through, and sometimes more challenging. But you know, I think the whole point is that you know, meaningful Aboriginal engagement in our research, and also Torres Strait Islander, because there are many Torres Strait Islanders living on the mainland, not on the islands. So we've got to consider that, and also to recognise the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, even within any one singular community. It's not just a homogenous group. So you know, looking at all these issues, and I think, you know, within the university sector, we need to make sure that you know, we follow the lead like Newcastle and UNE to an extent, but to have Aboriginal representation, First Nations representation on the university ethics committees as well, and again, not have just non-Indigenous people determining Indigenous ethics for us.